What's up, team? I'm just getting my stuff ready for a few days camping, hunting during the raw. I figured it was a pretty good time to do a pack dump and show you what I carry. The gear that I've got right here is for about 3 or 4 days. Bush stalking red deer. My ethos when it comes to gear is to keep it as light as possible without sacrificing too much comfort or safety. That allows me to carry everything I need on my back so I can hunt into an area. If I find a place I like to camp, I can set it up. Not relying on huts, that kind of thing. I kind of like that kind of self-sufficient, wander off and please yourself kind of vibe. So I'll talk you through some of the gear. Yeah, we'll get to it. This is what it's looking like laid out. I'll talk you through the individual items as we go. We'll start with the most important thing, which is obviously coffee. Bottles. One's pre-workout, the other one's just straight up black coffee. Gotta have that. The reason for the pre-workout, sometimes laziness, to be honest. I'm not a morning person, so sometimes I want to just jump out my hammock, chuck a pre-workout in my water, slam that down, and get on with the hunt. So my basic camp setup, all of this stuff, my tarp, hammock, mozzie net, and sleeping mat are all ultralight stuff. That's the DD super light tarp, 3x3 meter, blaze orange. Especially during the raw, you want to make sure you're seen, and also trying to find your way back to camp with this thing being blaze orange in low light conditions. Amazing. Bag. This is a down bag. Fairy down, made in New Zealand. I bought it off Trade Me. It was like $30. Sweet. DD super light hammock. This thing weighs what? 280 grams. I've slept in more comfortable hammocks, to be honest, but still, I love the weight of it. Thermalite Neo Air Uberlight. This thing was expensive, man, but it's more to do with how little room it takes up. Like it's tiny, right? So you can keep your pack volume down. DD Superlight mosquito net too. It's not going to be so bad now being autumn, but over the summer, mosquitoes, sandflies, insane. And then over this weekend, because the temperature's dropped, I'll have a sleeping bag liner. So that is my total camp setup. Generally I'll get to camp, set up, chuck that on, and then wander off hunting. So that's normally what I've got on my person. Knife, duct tape, knife sharpener. Obviously duct tape's got 1,000 uses. These Mora clippers, they're pretty cheap, they stay pretty sharp. Also, you're not going to break your heart if you lose it. GPS, spare batteries. This thing, for being so small, is an absolute beast. What is it? Olight Baton 2, super lightweight, 1,000 lumens, amazing. Never been so happy with the torch. EPIRB, you know, stings a bit when you have to buy it, but for me it was more about, you know, the missus or whatever, when you're out, gives her a bit of peace of mind that you've got it. Compass, emergency poncho. These emergency ponchos are cheap and cack, but I carry one anyway, just in case. Rope, many uses. Lighter, obviously for checking wind, making fire. This is more of a bow hunter's kind of thing, but because I'm an adult onset hunter, I've still got a lot to learn, so I use it more to take note of wind and how it's reacting, in the hope that I can learn more about it, rather than, I mean, you obviously use it for wind direction anyway. Length of tube off a vacuum.
Hello.
Okay, so water. Obviously generally pretty clean here in New Zealand, but this water filter weighs 7 grams. More duct tape wrapped around it. Dirty bottle, clean bottle. Fill my clean bottle up, stick the filter on the end, normally stick it under my leg against a log, filter it into that bottle. Self-explanatory. Super lightweight kit. I mean, what's that, like 10 grams maybe? I like these big Nalgene? Let's say Nalgene bottles. This one's glow in the dark, and also when you chuck your torch under it, makes a handy camp light. Kindle, needs no explanation, so to keep my sanity, big into reading books. Headphones, audiobook, music, gotta have it. Toiletries, pretty simple. Obviously if you're carrying coffee, you're gonna need to carry some of that, but make sure you bury it, you know. There's nothing worse than wandering through the bush and seeing somebody's fucking let me not rant about that, but inside there is just my toothbrush, toothpaste. Lightweight cooking kit. Generally inside here is a container of gas, but I don't have any at the moment. I've got to pick that up. Tiny wee cooker. I'm sure you're all familiar with these right now. Super, super lightweight titanium little thing. That one, if you're going to get one, make sure you get that one. I've tried these lightweight ones before and they're really flimsy, but that one doesn't actually seem so bad. Normally that all goes in there. Gas, cooker, lighter, tea bags, whatever. Kill kit and game bags. Animals out. Game bags, obviously pretty handy, keeps the flies off. You quarter your game up in the bush, chuck it in the bags, chuck it in your backpack. I've got 4 of them here. What I also like to do is lay 3 of them out with an extra t-shirt inside the other one, roll that and fold it back over, and that gives you a pillow to use in your hammock. Inside this little kill kit, it's actually like a kill kit and a first aid kit, if you will. A couple of bandages, steri strips, hand sanitizer, bandage, pawpaw, a couple of latex gloves for doing crime. You know, for obviously when you're breaking down an animal, keep your hands relatively clean if you can. Cable ties, needs no introduction. Wet wipes, again, obvious reasons. Sometimes you're covered in blood, muck, whatever. Small knife. Opinel, I'm a massive fan of these Opinel knives. They stay super sharp. So that knife is just specifically for skinning when it comes to breaking down an animal. The only drawback is with this mechanism, they're likely to get gunked up and covered in shit, but I'll put up with that for the quality of the blade. So one thing I'm really into is dehydrating my own meals. Basically just the same as the backcountry ready meals, but I make them myself, dehydrate them. I'll do a whole video on that in the future. But I make these bars. Inside there's just a bunch of good stuff. Peanut butter, almonds, raisins, protein powder, honey, that kind of stuff. It's not a Mars bar, but they're relatively healthy and they fill you up loads. Like one of these, fantastic. You know, they just weigh a couple of grams each, but they're super flavoursome. I actually think of that as more like a drink, to be honest. I find them satiating in terms of like how full you are, but they taste awesome, so I'd basically just use that as a drink. Again, hydro meals. So for this trip I've got some dehydrated pumpkin. That's actually 2 or 3 servings of venison stew. That's the venison itself. That's 2 shanks from a red deer, but slow cooked, shredded up, dehydrated. Lentil chili. Huge fan of lentils and beans when I'm outside. So for those 5 bags there, I've probably got a good half a dozen meals, although it doesn't look like it. So with my gun, it's a Remington 700. It's got a suppressor, it's got a fairly average scope. It's nothing that's going to really wow anybody. It's actually the first rifle I ever bought, but it's paid for itself many times in game. You know, it's took a couple of knocks and stayed zeroed, and yeah, it's proved itself to be a good tool. So I'm not going to do a massive video about that rifle because I'm not really qualified to do that. Okay, so in terms of clothing, I pack Jimmy Jams for the night. It's always nice to have something warm and dry to get into. Camo hat, you know, you got to have that redneck aesthetic when you're out there. It's super important. Dry pair of socks. You got to have that dry pair of socks. Take a spare pair always, even if you're not counting on getting your feet wet. Then what I'll do is I'll have a dry pair and a wet pair. I'll even chuck them down the side of my leggings or whatever and just use the heat of my body to dry them out. If not, I'll keep my dry pair in my hammock and put my wet pair back on in the morning. Leggings, super important if you want that Robin Hood vibe. Nah, but the area that I'm going to hunt, it starts off with a bunch of dry grass and my skin absolutely hates it. That's pretty handy, and you don't chafe if you've got thick thighs like me. Gloves, these are super lightweight, summer gloves. Just stops your hands like glowing when you're in the bush, you know. Also keeps the sandflies off when you're setting up camp. like I say, not so bad this time of year, but generally at that place, the sandflies are pretty intense. I've actually cut the thumb out of that one so I can still use my phone. Done a pretty hoary job. Orange balaclava. I actually thought this was a beanie when I bought it, and I've come to just love it. You know, wear that blaze orange. Obvious reasons.
Give me your money.
Generally, I'll be wearing a wool t-shirt. I've actually got that on now, so I can't show you that. Wool t-shirt, stubbies. Better to have wet legs and be able to dry them than a pair of wet, heavy, heavy wet pants. So, Stubbs and Swanee. Stubbs and Swanee is just pure Kiwi style, but I just love it. It's you know, it's not without function. Swan dry, yeah, they're relatively heavy compared to synthetics, but obviously red, good for the raw. Super versatile piece of kit. I cannot stress enough how much I love the Swan dry. Fantastic. Raincoat, it's getting to that time now. Hunter's Element, Odyssey jacket. This one's had barely any use. I bought it in the summer, to be honest. I haven't actually used it enough to give an honest review of that, but it's a raincoat. Okay, so in terms of backpack, this absolute top of the line snazzy piece of kit. This thing cost me $7 from an op shop. It's got a heavy duty plastic bag inside just to keep my gear dry. I've bought expensive backpacks since buying this one, and I always just come back to this one. It also has these knobs on the top of the frame, which I sling my rifle sling over. And then when you're doing those long tramps, you don't get that kind of achy shoulder from having your rifle on one side all the time. Inside this pouch, I've put a square of foam that I've cut from a yoga mat. And if you are on the move and you're going to sit down, you just sit the flap open, sit on that, you know, no sticks up your arse. Also, I'll lie my pack down underneath my hammock, and then I'll have something dry to change my socks, get changed, whatever. You don't end up with all moss in the bottom of your sleeping bag. So not including my rifle or the clothes that I'll be wearing, that's all packed up. All up, that's weighing in at just under 12 kilos, maybe 11.5 kilos. So that's basically it, just under 12 kilos. The only thing missing out of that pack is a canister of gas. Could it be lighter? Yeah, sure. If you lost things like your Kindle, you change your Swanee out for something synthetic, there's always ways to make it lighter, but for me, in terms of comfort and durability, I'm pretty happy with that. So, yeah, see you next.